You know how stressful it is when guidance systems go down. You lose field time, you lose yield potential, you lose patience. Help is here. Raven Cruiser 2 RTK with Slingshot. Precision simplified. Learn more at ravensimple.com.
Brian, I don't have allergies to anything that I'm aware of, but for some of our viewers, this weed is going to be their worst nightmare. It's common ragweed.
Well, I don't think I have allergies either, but I do seem to be allergic to Roundup resistant weeds, Darren. I don't like them. They're hard to control. And you know, this common ragweed thing, I like to think that I'm a fairly decent agronomist and I kind of know what's going on in the region where we farm. And this one has, even for me, kind of caught me off guard a little bit because I was surveying a group of agronomists last year in the Dakotas and Minnesota and Iowa. And you know what the #1 weed problem they said in soybeans? I assumed it would be, well, water hemp, lamb's quarters, maybe even mare's tail, but nope. Common ragweed and giant ragweed were right at the top. So that common ragweed, it is a tough weed.
Well, it's been a tough weed for a long time. And really, you think about back to the conventional days in the 80s and early 90s, we didn't have many good options for post-emerge control of either of the ragweed species. Now, today we're focusing on common ragweed, but giant ragweed's the same way. It's tough to find good products to get it. Now, we did have one product that came out, First Rate, that all of a sudden, wow, First Rate's great. Everybody is using First Rate, and there are some areas of the country where First Rate isn't working like it used to. So it's too bad that we have very few options and then we're kind of forced to use the same thing over and over.
Well, here's the other thing with First Rate. There is a product called Authority First that you could use pre-emerge in soybeans. We don't recommend that most of the time when you've got a ragweed problem, and you say, well, why not? Well, the reason why is because you can only use First Rate one time per season, and we'd rather save it for post-emerge use. So if you want to use Authority First pre, you certainly can do that, but just keep in mind, now you can't use First Rate post-emerge.
Well, that's kind of a tough deal, Brian, because you take the product that's performed the best in the university trials and many of the side-by-sides farmers have done, and you say, well, you can't use it. Well, that's kind of frustrating, but what can you use pre-emerge that'll do a decent job on ragweed?
Well, if it was me, I'd probably go with Authority MTZ. That's a good one. I could certainly use Valor pre-emerge. You've got some options out there. It's not that big a deal. Pre-emerge, we have choices. When it comes to post-emerge, that's where we struggle because we want to use that First Rate, but what happens if we get a second flush? Now what are we going to do? When we're talking about all these other herbicides beside Roundup, we can't go spray when they're a foot tall. On the label, it's going to tell you 2 to 4 inches tall. So if you can get out there with your First Rate or your Flex Star or your Cobra when the weeds are 2 to 4 inches tall, you'll probably be okay. You wait till they're a foot tall and good luck.
All right, let's turn to another crop. Let's look at corn just a little bit. Now, we've never really had problems with common ragweed on our farm in corn because there have been good choices all the way through.
Yeah, pre-emerge, you really can do a lot of things. Our favorite would probably be Balance Flex early. Verdict is going to be a nice product. Heck, even Sure Start and Triple Flex will probably work okay. We're not real big fans of Harness Surpass, Outlook, and Dual on common ragweed. Yes, they'll help, but they're not going to be perfect.
Okay, post-emerge, we've had good choices for a long time. Dicamba used to do a nice job on our farm if we had any of the common ragweed around. Now Status is probably our best choice for common ragweed. We'll do a decent job with Callisto, Laudis, Impact again if we get those weeds when you're supposed to, when they're, you know, maybe 2 to 4 inches tall.
And then you could throw a little bit of atrazine in there as well. So we do have a number of options. Turning to wheat, that's probably where I would go with Huskie. I think that would be the best choice. Wide match would be okay, especially if you threw in a little bit of the Affinity broad spec or Addition broad spec.
All right, Brian, now for those allergy sufferers out there, if it happens to be in your lawn or in your tree belt, 2,4-D does an okay job on it.
Yeah, I would just use 2,4-D, but you're probably going to have to use it multiple times during the year. This weed does seem to germinate quite often during the season. It's not a winter annual or anything. It is just a simple summer annual. But unfortunately, yeah, we do have this whole ragweed and pollen issue, but there are a lot of ways to get it under control.
Well, our weed of the week today was common ragweed. Get it under control with one of the methods we discussed today. It's all time for this week's weed, but Iron Talk is coming up next.